Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden says he is praying for President Trump's swift recovery after he tested positive for COVID-19. Let's head over to Nicole Sganga now to talk about what the test results mean going forward. So, Nicole, give us a breakdown on how the campaign is responding. What are you hearing?
Well, first and foremost, Vlad, there is an understandable concern about the president and his health. That is number one, first and foremost. And, you know, frankly, I've heard from a former Trump 2016 campaign official I just got off the phone with who said that the campaign right now is struggling a little bit. They are trying to reformulate and figure out that with all political events, with all campaign events for this president suspended indefinitely, what are the next steps going to look like? And so we're still waiting to hear more from the campaign. We know that the president has canceled his rally later today in Florida. We know that he will not be traveling to campaign events as long as he tests positive for COVID-19. He plans on quarantining inside the White House. So certainly a tall order for this campaign just 1 month out from Election Day.
Can we sort of can you really walk us through sort of the timeline of events that the president held this week, campaign events I'm talking about, because he really sort of came in contact, or at least was in the general area of a lot of people?
Yeah, absolutely. And so as we know, on Monday, the president gave a briefing at the White House to talk about his debate prep. He appeared there with Governor Chris Christie and former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who said in their own test prep debate sessions that no one was wearing a mask during those sessions. And then, of course, the president traveling to the debate in Cleveland on Tuesday, where he was tested. Joe Biden was tested prior to that debate. But of course, we know that there was a live audience that was there. You know, we've heard reports on the ground from, CBS News' Ed O'Keefe that while some people in the audience were wearing masks, not everyone was. The president then traveled on Wednesday. He held a fundraiser in Minneapolis. I am told that everyone inside that event, the roughly 100 or so people who attended that fundraiser, were tested for COVID-19 prior to that event, and that the president was taking pictures with individuals at that event, that there was social distancing, but that there were no masks worn. I was at the president's rally in Minnesota on Wednesday night in Duluth. The president spoke for a much shorter time than he usually does, about 45 minutes, and he was fairly close to that crowd, Anne-Marie. Before starting his speech, he was tossing Make America Great Again hats into the audience, so he was within tossing range of a number of people, and certainly we've seen some tweets from Democratic lawmakers around Minnesota with concerns about constituents who showed up to that rally. Being at that rally on the ground, I can tell you I did not see many masks on people who were seated in the audience at that event. And then we know the president, after returning to Washington, D.C., then traveled to Bedminster to hold yet another fundraiser at his private golf club yesterday. We are told again that individuals were tested at that campaign event, but that masks were not required. Again, roughly around 100 people at that event as well, Anne-Marie. And I should point out that the president has been traveling this week with a number of Trump campaign officials, including campaign manager Bill Stepien, who was seen without wearing a mask during the Ohio debate, getting into a van with, White House counselor, top aide to the president, Hope Hicks, who we know also tested positive. Also, Jason Miller was seen there traveling with that group as well, a top campaign senior advisor. And so some concern now about how many Trump campaign officials have perhaps tested positive for the coronavirus. We're still working on getting those numbers. But unlike the White House, the Trump campaign headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, does not have a COVID-19 testing protocol.
We're getting some news from the chairwoman of the GOP. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so I just spoke with a spokesperson from the Republican National Committee. Now, we shouldn't conflate these two things because Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel was not traveling with the president this week. However, according to a spokesperson, I just got this statement, so I'm going to read it to you off of my phone. After a member of her family tested positive for COVID-19, the chairwoman was tested for the virus. On Wednesday afternoon, she got a confirmation she was COVID-19 positive. She has been at her home in Michigan since last Saturday. So again, she was not traveling with the president in Air Force One or with any of those campaign officials. Still very troubling news, hoping for her speedy recovery. We now have, the president of the United States, at least one of his top officials, Hope Hicks, and the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, all testing positive for COVID-19 within 48 hours.
So, the president, we heard in those tapes, admitted to wanting to downplay the pandemic. He has said that this pandemic is coming to an end. It's been reported that at this fundraiser that he just had in New Jersey, he said that we're sort of close to wrapping this up. Not those weren't his words, but that this pandemic is coming to an end. Any word from the campaign about whether or not they will be tweaking that messaging moving forward?
Yeah, well, I think we got a little bit of a taste of this when White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany put out a tweet last night saying that the country is with the president, that he is strong. The president tweeting himself that we will get through this together. Now, we should point out, as you did at that fundraiser last night, the president oftentimes speaks on the trail that we are rounding the curve on the pandemic. That is something we hear at every single Trump campaign rally, that we are rounding the curve, that things are looking up for the United States, that a vaccine is just weeks away. And supporters on the ground who I speak with take the president at his word when he says that. They are optimistic. I don't expect to see the campaign move away from the president's optimistic message, but perhaps they will have to tweak that a bit, to confront the reality that now the president is in fact recovering from the coronavirus pandemic. He will no longer be on the road championing his message of Make America Great Again. That being said, I think we can expect to hear and see more of the president and the campaign, including his surrogates, door knockers, field organizers in the coming days, who tell me they anticipate that they will be, now charged with continuing on that message. So just because the president is not traveling doesn't mean that, everything stops for this campaign. They still anticipate they will be organizing in battleground states and that there will be surrogates who are, moving around. We know that Vice President Mike Pence has tested negative for the coronavirus, so we await to see what some of his campaign plans might be as well.
Nicole, speaking of the campaign and of travels, you have been tracking the Trump campaign specifically over the last couple of days, but for quite some time. Can you describe the president's demeanor, the president's behavior at some of those events? And I know that probably doesn't say a lot because none of us are doctors, but we have seen the president in past rallies, how he behaves, and there's some reporting around his demeanor at the most recent ones.
Sure, and I'm certainly not a Dr. Vlad, so thank you for pointing that out. But I will say, typically, we hear from President Trump at these rallies. He oftentimes talks well over an hour. I've been to rallies where he's spoken for over 2 hours. He's very energetic. He's lively. He often deviates from his scripted remarks on teleprompter to embrace new topics or new issues. He is constantly playing back and forth with the crowd, embracing folks who are chanting, not physically, but with his own words. Recently, I've started to notice that we have seen the president seem a bit more tired, a bit more removed. So at that rally in Duluth, Minnesota on Wednesday night, the president only spoke for about 45 minutes. It's about half of the time he normally speaks. He kept mainly to scripted remarks. This is something I noticed long before and sent out to our colleagues at CBS News before we knew of his positive test result. He did seem more removed from the crowds and, more eager to get back onto Air Force One and get back to Washington, D.C. He held a tele-rally over the phone just last night with his supporters in Iowa. The president did sound a bit raspier. It sounded like he was struggling to get through some of his sentences, that he was was, less inclined to, talk at length about some of the issues he's most passionate about America First, and was just sort of trying to get through the call. That said, the president has had a very busy schedule this week. I've heard from, campaign aides prior to him testing positive for COVID-19 who said that he didn't get a lot of sleep this week, so something else to consider as well.
Yeah. Nicole, thank you so much.
Thank you.